What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Today to discuss offseason football. A big topic of debate last year was when was the best time to buy or sell when it came to the offseason football market. Buddy of mine, Dakota at Sports Cards Anonymous, had said he thought at the time that the draft would be the peak. I was more leaning on late summer or midsummer, basically the national, essentially. That right around the Hall of Fame game, beginning of training camp area, like that run up there to the season would be the best time. Now, in hindsight, looking back at the data, Dakota was right. The peak of the offseason market was definitely the NFL draft. If you look over 1 year charts and go back 1 year, most of the cards peak there, dipped throughout late spring, early summer, picked up a little bit, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, so bear with me. Picked up a little bit in that run up to the season, and then the season started, and then the season happened. So, players went down that underperformed, Baker, Lamar, etc. Players that overperformed or had deep runs, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, etc. Josh Allen went up. The season machinations started happening at that point in time. So I was curious, do we think we're at the NFL draft? The NFL draft is tonight. I'm recording this on Wednesday night, the eve of the NFL draft. But the NFL draft is tonight. Do we feel that this is the peak of the NFL market? Because I'll tell you, it doesn't to me. Things have been dipping pretty good the last 90 days. If you look at the screen here, I have the last 90-day chart up with a few filters on, but these are some of the top football cards over the last 90 days. You see a lot of red there, especially towards the top. The big names really got hit the hardest, so it makes it look a little worse. But your Tom Brady, Bowman rookies, Patrick Mahomes Prism, Joe Burrow Silver. This one is a little unfair because 90 days puts this right before the Super Bowl. So his stuff was inflated. So this is, obviously his stuff's going to come down because they lost the Super Bowl. So I'm going to put a big asterisk next to Burrow stuff, specifically when we're looking at 90-day charts. That puts us in the late January. So, of course, this stuff was only going to come down. Josh Allen down a decent chunk, Patrick Mahomes, even Stafford's down. He won the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers, so on and so forth. When I flip this around and we look at the green, one, it's a lot smaller numbers. Not that many players are actually up that much over the last 90 days, which is the bulk of the NFL offseason. Tua up, not surprising with the Tyreek Hill trade. Deebo Samuel up a little bit, probably not surprising. I'm guessing a lot of this is just from the recent trade buzz. Derrick Henry, Frank Gore, Deshaun Watson, once again, not surprising given how his fortunes have changed during this NFL offseason. But he is one, for example, maybe we'll talk about him later in the video, that did spike way up when he first got traded to the Browns. His cards prices doubled, and they've come all the way back down to earth to right where they left off before. In fact, let me see. I got it up here somewhere. Here it is. Let me turn off this Patrick Mahomes. So, here's Deshaun Watson over the last year. Now, going back in time, it's a little weird because obviously he had all this stuff going on. But, here's in season last year when things didn't look so bright. His card was going for just under $400 at around early December, just after Thanksgiving. Started the slow creep up, which we see a lot. I've talked about this before. Sometimes buying in season is the play, especially for these guys that get hurt. Or in this case, air quotes, hurt, out for the season, we'll say. You buy in season, and it's actually probably the cheapest time to buy their stuff, not in the actual air quotes off season, because it is that player's off season, in season. But it starts to slow climb up. We get the trade news here, and it immediately spikes. So pre-trade news, we'll just kind of grab one in the middle here. It was going for about $550, give or take. He gets traded. It goes to the moon. Literally to the moon, $907, but comes right back down again. This was on 3/12, March 12th. By March 30th, it was all the way back down to $500. and it has actually settled in. There's 500. What's the last sale? Right about 500. 580 the last sale is. But you can see most of the bulk of those are actually under that price, more in the 500, 550 range is where this card's been sitting. So this was your brief window to sell right here. So just kind of an indictment once again on the general football off-season market, how that spiked and immediately came back down again. Now, maybe that's people worried about legal troubles, whatever. Let's look at a couple other examples looking at more one-year charts. So this is Baker, Allen, and Lamar, PSA 10 base prisms, going back an entire year. So you could see a year ago in April, this stuff was basically at its peak. And once again, kind of painting with a broad brush here, just generally speaking, all of these dipped down throughout the early summer months. You can see they get slight tick ups in this August range, at least for Josh Allen. Lamar, not so much. Baker, a little bit. Then the season starts. Baker goes downhill very quickly. Lamar goes downhill very quickly. Basically, 1 month into the season is where these things really take a turn. Allen actually creeps up and then crashes hard and then flattens out, comes back up a little bit as he makes his playoff run, and then kind of bounces around from there. So, you could see these cliffs that these three go off of once we get about a month into the actual NFL season. And you could see here the peak at the beginning of the spring at the NFL draft last year. I looked at the dates 1 year ago, was basically at this exact same point where we are a few days before the NFL draft. So it works out just perfect. Taking a little bit of a different approach here. This is Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. Kind of similar things, though. You could see Herbert and Burrow, Tua to a lesser extent, are up a little higher in May, and then they dip down throughout the summer, kind of hang there. And then, this is in season. This is August right here. This is September right here. They tick up a little bit. Herbert started the season pretty strong. And then he tailed off and Burrow took off. And then this is obviously the Super Bowl run. And then once again, you see how quickly he comes back down again and is back underneath Herbert. Tua, similar thing. Strong off season. The season starts. He does not play very well. Immediately dives some more, flattens out, and then got the uptick to the Tyreek Hill trade and has already started to pull back again. So clearly, it doesn't feel like we're in the peak of the NFL market at the moment, at least to me, based off prices. Things have been relatively flat. If I change this chart the last 90 days, once again, Burrow gets a little unfairly penalized here because of the Super Bowl stuff, but down 38%, Tua up 52%, Herbert only up 13%. Once again, put an asterisk next to this. Tua up 52%, not surprising because he had the Tyreek Hill trade. So he did get a bump. So he had major news happen to him / his team, and he got a bump to reflect that. Herbert, the Chargers have had a fine offseason, but I don't know that they've made any super sexy moves, not like a Tyreek Hill level. The Bengals have gotten a lot better with improved offensive line help, but not sexy moves. Once again, not a Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams type situation. So what's different this year than last year? A couple things. And this is why I think maybe things are a little bit different right now. And once again, I could be wrong. And curious for your thoughts and comments down below on this one. Was last year at the NFL draft, was that truly the peak of the market? Or was it just coincidence because the early 2021 market was so hot? Remember, let's get in a time machine and go back to January, February, March of 2021, April even. That was one of the peaks of the sports card market, the frenzy. And then it kind of dropped off when we got into May as a whole. I'm talking all sports, not just football. So did it just appear that that was the peak of football and it just happened, coincidence, to time around the NFL draft? Also, last year's NFL draft was a very hyped NFL draft. There was a lot of talk about that draft because of all the quarterback talent. This year, we don't have that quarterback talent. The NFL draft, kind of weak. You're not really, I mean, myself personally, I'm not as invested in the NFL draft this time around as I was last year. Last year, I was listening to, all the draft podcasts I could get my hands on. This year, not so much. It's just not as exciting as a class, in my opinion, at least from a casual observer. I'm not draft guy where, I'm scouting college prospects and all this and stuff. I'm sure there's some really good, exciting players in there, but there's a lot of sex appeal in this draft. So it could be a combination of that as well. This draft is not putting the NFL in the front of most people's minds. I feel like right now the dominant subject is the NBA playoffs because the first round's been pretty fun. A lot of big names, a lot of big matchups. Celtics, Nets, Morant and Ant-Man, the future of the league going at it. Just a whole lot of nonsense going on in the NBA playoffs. And it appears to be, at least from my perspective, overshadowing the NFL draft. The other thing which we've talked about before, we should be chasing Trevor Lawrence cards right now, Justin Fields cards right now. And they are out there, but the key products aren't out there yet. Prism hasn't released. Optic hasn't released. Select hasn't released. We don't have NT. We don't have Flawless. These bigger name products that we should all be buzzing for just don't exist right now. So I wonder if that's taken a little bit of luster out of it. And then, the card market fell right after May of last year. The entire market had a major pullback. So I'm wondering how much of it was just really coincidence and the entire pullback sucked the wind out of the sails moving into the NFL offseason. I could tell you, even though prices didn't go way up, football was extremely hot at the National. Extremely liquid. Once again, liquidity does not always necessarily equal prices going up on a chart and a graph. But football is what people were looking for. That is 100% a fact. You were walking around the show floor. People were looking for the big name quarterbacks. People were looking for the pet project quarterbacks, trade nights, etc. All you were hearing was football, 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 football. Tons of football names. If you look at the data, card prices really did not spike super high for those players at that time, even though their cards were extremely liquid. So to me, the interesting thing here is, where do things go? And this is, I don't know the answer to this. I'm just kind of, talking out loud to you guys and girls. Where do things go over the next 90 days? As we move through May, June, and July. Last year, it dipped pretty hard. Football specifically. The NFL draft comes and goes, free agency's over. It kind of leaves the limelight for a little while until things ramp back up again. Things that'll be different this year. We are going to be having product coming in hot, as I mentioned earlier. Lawrence, Fields, etc. Those guys don't have cards yet. Normally, those cards would have been out for the end of the season. They would have got their big run-up upon release. They would have dipped, and then prices probably would have increased as people began the spec on this upcoming season. That's not the case right now because that product hasn't even come out yet. It's going to come out here very soon. How does that throw a monkey wrench into the NFL offseason? Does it keep the entire NFL card market relevant because that product's releasing? Or is it just kind of like, okay, some Justin Fields stuff come out, whatever. Davis Mills cards are here. Cool. Okay. NBA finals are going on. I don't really care about this right now. Or is it going to drive hype and demand for the NFL as a whole? So that's an interesting aspect of it. The card market's still in a weird place right now from a more macro level perspective. A lot of worldwide events having general impacts on things from inflation, the economy, wars, COVID still hanging around, this, that, and the other thing. There's still a lot of stuff going on in the world that is also having indicators on the sports card market as a whole. Does that keep football down? I don't know. Like I said, I do not know. So curious for your thoughts and comments down below on this one. I don't know if this will be the peak of the market or not. My gut tells me no. Is that Burrow and Herbert and some of these other hyped guys do see price increases between now and the season starting. But the real question is it enough price increase? Is it going to be, if they only go up 10%, cool, you covered your eBay fees on the flip. That's not enough. It needs to go up a little bit more than that. Now, there's things you could do on the edges. Maybe you bought under comps, then use that to leverage to trade into something else. There's a whole bunch of little angles, you could do on stuff like that to add value, even if you're not actually selling the card at that given time. But anyways, that's kind of where my thought process is right now. I didn't necessarily solve anything there, I don't believe, but just kind of speaking it into existence. So curious for your thoughts. Catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.